Earlier in the week, it was announced that Israel and Gaza had a ceasefire, and it seems to be holding. To talk about it, Edu Aharoni, the General Counsel of Israel in New York. Sir, welcome back to Big 550 KTRS. Edu Aharoni, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much. It's good to be here.
You got it. The ceasefire's holding. Good news, right?
Yes, although, we have a very bad experience dealing with Hamas. They violated each and every one of the previous 12 attempts to put in place a ceasefire, so let's hope.
What is it about this one that seems to be working, whereas the other ones failed?
Well, after 50 days of intense fighting, Hamas lost most of their rockets and missiles. Most of the overwhelming majority of the tunnels that they built were destroyed. None of their demands which they presented early were met. So Hamas is pretty badly hit, and I guess that's the main reason for them to this time accept the Egyptian proposal.
Right. Okay, so now we sort of have this sort of tentative peace going forward. How much has changed? Not much has changed since before those teenagers were kidnapped and since before the military attacks.
Right. We have two separate issues here on the table. The first is the conflict that we've been having on and off with the Palestinian national movement, which is over land and territory, and we've been dealing with them on and off since 1993. That's one thing, and the position of the majority of Israelis is supportive of the idea of a Palestinian statehood. But this conflict that we're having with Hamas is part of the clash of civilizations that the West is having with global jihad. This has nothing to do with Palestinian nationalism. This has nothing to do with the Palestinian state. Hamas is like ISIS, is like Al-Qaeda. So this is an entirely different animal. And as a result, we're not hoping to have peace, because with Hamas, you can't have compromise simply because they're out there to get us. They want us dead.
We have heard often that many of the countries in the Middle East are secretly backing Israel because they're just afraid of Hamas as the Israelis are.
It's true, and we don't blame them. And even during the fighting, there were many, many stories in the Western media about the silence of the Arab leadership. And there's no coincidence. Hamas represents a global jihad. Hamas is part of that group of deadly, brutal organizations that behead Westerners, that stand for everything that we oppose. At the end of the day, they want to see the destruction of Western civilization.
So what happens now with ISIS and Israel and the possible impending airstrikes from the U.S. and the Middle East? What are your thoughts as you watch this play out?
Well, Israel will continue to do what we've done since the beginning of the recent wave of instability throughout the region, mistakenly referred to by the Western media as the Arab Spring. Spring is something positive. I'm not so sure that this is a positive development. Since the beginning of this regional disintegration, or the beginning of the undoing of Sykes-Picot, we mostly observe the situation very carefully. We monitor the situation. At the same time, we are determined to protect ourselves and to be ready for all eventuality.
It's a really interesting position we find ourselves in that these enemies and these bad guys are so bad that the Israelis and the Arab states in the Middle East are actually on the same common ground. That's almost extraordinary that we find ourselves in this position, is it not?
It's true. It happened before. If you remember, when the first Gulf War broke out, there was a very interesting coalition that included, of course, the United States, the Western allies, included Israel. It included the Saudi Arabia. Even Syria was on board. The Palestinians were on the other side, and they paid a very heavy price for that mistake. And Abu Mazen, the current leader of the Palestinian National Movement, I think learned something from that lesson.
It's also interesting that just a few months ago we were thinking about bombing Syria, and now we're talking about helping Syria out and sort of get out from under this ISIS situation.
Well, one thing for sure, the Middle East is complicated, and it's getting more and more complex to understand.
Yeah. The other thing too is Egypt helped broker the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. Correct?
Correct, because Egypt played a very constructive role in this, and the reason is because Hamas, and this is important for our listeners to know, Hamas is the ideological twin of the Islamic Brothers, mistakenly referred to here as the Islamic Brotherhood. Believe me, there's nothing that resembles brotherhood in this organization. They call themselves the Islamic Brothers. And the Islamic Brothers is a political party, a terrorist organization that was responsible for the assassination of Anwar Sadat, president of Egypt, that signed the peace treaty with Israel in 1979. And for this current administration, Islamic Brothers and Hamas are the same.
That is Edu Aharoni. Wish we had more time. So it's a great primer every time you're on the show to help explain the different pieces and how they move around the board. Edu Aharoni, the General Counsel of Israel in New York. Sir, thank you very much. Have a safe weekend.
Thank you for having me.
You got it. 728, Big 550.